Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Thanksgiving night. It is 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and I don't know about you, but I'm stuffed and I'm exhausted, and I actually have been sitting here for the last hour and a half catching up on all the weather. Weather Patreon members, there is a weather in 10 video, which in reality is weather in 20. So if you uh, watched it from when I posted it a half an hour ago, you should be done with it. Otherwise, you may want to wait till after the live stream. There's a little stuff I'm going to cover on weather in the Patreon weather video that I'm not going to have time to do here on the live stream tonight. But suffice to say, there's some very interesting developments today. Not a surprise, really. We've been talking about this blocking pattern and how unstable blocking patterns are in terms of how models handle them, and we've been watching from run to run. Either the block is stronger or the block is weaker. If the block is stronger, the low goes further south. It's a colder look, and you have more of a snow possibility. If the block at the times when the models were maybe a bit weaker with it, the surface low, the storm that's coming out of the west redevelops a bit further to the north, and then that means less cold air for the area of risk. One of the issues is our geography. The folks from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, particularly along the coastal area, that area right along 40 degrees north, that is kind of the halfway point. It's actually, from a weather standpoint, it's a pretty good place to be because you get a little bit of everything. The problem is in the wintertime, sometimes you can be too warm and all the snow is to the north, or you can be too cold and all the snow winds up being to the south. Every so often, you get these winters where it's just right and in the middle, but we always seem to be struggling with something with regards to trying to figure out rain versus snow or just snow at all. But it seems to me that our risks for snow on Sunday here in the Northeast has gone up because I'm looking at models, not just the European, by the way, but the colder NAM model today, even the GFS to it its own way, is showing that it may be a little bit colder in the surface redevelopment, perhaps a bit further to the south than what it was indicating. Maybe instead of being up close to the south shore of Long Island, it's more down off the New Jersey coast, down off Atlantic City or Cape May. This is going to be kind of a tough back and forth. The other thing is that the way this event evolves, it's actually going to be 2 rounds of precip. You're going to see an arm of precip come up on Sunday, and that is ahead of the old low, the dying primary, and the dying occlusion, the occluded front. And then you're going to get the secondary to develop. And once that secondary low develops, it's going to have its own area of precip that starts to blossom out later Sunday night and on Monday. And you've got this big upper low that's swinging around as well. That's going to just, enhance the whole thing. So trying to piece it all together and time it is very, very difficult. You certainly can see the puzzle pieces there where if they come together, somebody could wind up with a solid pounding of snow. We talked about that last night and night before last. You can also see how the pieces maybe don't quite come together for this area. Perhaps they come together for up in southeastern New England. Nonetheless, I think the odds are growing that we're going to see at least something out of all of this. So let's get started with what's on the maps tonight. We still have, I'm really impressed, I guess maybe because it's been so quiet and it's actually a bit less than what we had yesterday, but because the first winter storm was coming out of the plains and moving through the Great Lakes, we've got the second one now, and of course, huge area of winter storm warnings from California on northeastward to Montana and also eastward into New Mexico. You've got winter weather advisories running up through much of the plains, winter storm watches across Minnesota and North Dakota. Blizzard warnings are up for much of western South Dakota and northeastern Wyoming, and winter storm warnings up for Montana and Utah. And oddly enough, the one area where they got clobbered uh, with the first storm, and that was in northeastern Colorado. Much of that area may wind up not getting very much out of what's happening in the western storm. But there are high wind warnings up, and they're forecasting winds to gust to 70 or 80 miles an hour in some places. So instead of having snow coming out of the sky, they're going to have snow being blown around from the 2 feet that's on the ground, and you're going to have all sorts of ground blizzards out of all of this. So certainly not fun times for that area in northeastern Colorado. One of our regular Patreon members and also a regular on this video, on these live streams, Ruthless Goat, he will attest to the fact that the 20 plus inches of snow that he got, not fun to deal with. And now with these strong winds, it's going to be even more of an issue. Now here's the Weather Service's forecast map, and this is for snow through Sunday evening, and it's generally a 1 to 4 inch snowfall that's being forecast here. I beefed mine up a bit. I went a bit higher than what the Weather Service has on my snow forecast map on my early call, and I will see if I can bring this up so you can take a look at it. And there it should be there. Okay, good. So this was my early call that is up on the Patreon platform. So I actually went a little bit higher than the Weather Service. I'm thinking that there's a possibility that we could see some 4-inch plus amounts in that 2 to 4 inch zone that I've drawn. And again, this is only through Sunday evening. I thought it was wise to break it up in pieces because the first part from the thumping is distinct from the second part, which would be what develops with the secondary low, and that will come later Sunday night or during the day on Monday. So I just wanted to kind of make that distinction here, and please, I want to make it clear. Okay, this is part 1 through 7 p.m. on Sunday. So I'm thinking maybe 1 to 2, 2 to 4 might be a pretty good bet, even down to the coastal areas. I'm also counting on the stronger blocking, signaling that we are going to have some slightly colder temperatures here. I think we're going to be down in the 20s to around 30 Saturday morning, and probably not much out of the 30s during the day Saturday, particularly if we cloud up relatively quickly. And then after that, we'll see. The air is going to be dry from that. The dew points are going to be low. So when precip starts, I think you'll see some evaporational cooling, and that will help keep temperatures down. Also, that 5,000 foot level, the 850 millibar level, is actually fairly cold right into the middle part of Sunday afternoon. The freezing line doesn't reach New York City on the NAM model anyway. Doesn't get there until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's enough time to put down some precip. The other thing is, in terms of WPC, on their snow forecast here, we're in day 4, is for Monday. This is for the period from 12Z Sunday through 12Z Monday of at least 1/4 of an inch. And you'll notice that the blue, for the first time, is in northern New Jersey. That darker blue is 50% or more, and that lighter blue is 70% probability of at least 1/4 of an inch of liquid. It extends pretty far south down the coast, almost to about New York City. The 10% chance gets down to just south and east of the New Jersey Turnpike and runs down into southwest Jersey. If the European is right, this is probably going to wind up getting beefed up a little bit. This forecast was issued, by the way, at noon today. So this was done without the input of the day run European. This was done off the night run European, which was a little colder than the others. And the WPC seems to be leaning to the idea of going a bit further south with all of this. It's going to be interesting to see tomorrow what we have in their forecast. The satellite loop tonight, a lot of clouds is streaming up from that tropical moisture. We're seeing actually some of that high cloudiness arc eastward across Ohio and into Virginia and Pennsylvania, and even streaming down into southern New Jersey. And in the meantime, your developing storm that's east of Cape Cod, or east of Long Island, it's actually south of 40 degrees north, is rather large. It's covering a large area of geography. It's fairly impressive on the signature that you're seeing on the satellite. And of course, you see the western storm, not nearly as impressive looking on the satellite as it was a couple of days ago when it was coming inland. But nonetheless, you're seeing a lot of moisture with that very deep trough in the western part of the United States. And that eventually is going to get ejected eastward. The surface map tonight, and this is the 4 p.m. surface map. I don't think the 0Z is in yet, and it's not. But you see the western storm, as Joe Rayo put it on the live stream last night. I think it was a very, very good, solid description. You know, these storms come in as powerhouses sometimes into the west, and then they hit the mountains, and they're basically taken apart into pieces. But all that energy still remains, and it will piece itself back together in the next day or two as it moves on out to the east. And meanwhile, we have our coastal low, a 982 low south of Nova Scotia, and you see it here on the surface map. Pretty tight gradient there going on in Nova Scotia with temperatures in the low and mid 30s. I'm trying to see. Looks like a few places are getting some snow out of this. And it's in the chilly 30s in New Brunswick and back up into Maine, where there was some snow earlier on today. But the gradient still remains pretty tight. You've got a 38, 39 high here south of Hudson Bay. You've got a 982 low. So basically at about 90 west, and this is 60, so 30 degrees, 1,800 miles. You're talking... 1857 millibars of pressure. That's a fairly tight pressure gradient, particularly in this area. Actually, the gradient is even tighter because the 36 is at 80 west. So you're talking about 1,200 miles to go from a 982 pressure to a 1036 pressure. That is a fairly tight gradient. The tightest part of the gradient is from New York City on east at the moment. And I can tell you here this evening, the winds were gusting to 35, 45 miles an hour at times. It was pretty busy out there. Radar showing a little precip there through Illinois and into western Kentucky and parts of Tennessee and back through Missouri, and also seeing some rain and snow in Southern California and in through Arizona, and that is moving to the northeast as that western storm gets underway. So why don't we take a look at what's happening with respect to the block, because at the end of the day, it really is going to be about our blocking pattern. This is going to be the driver. It looks like on today's run, it runs that the block is a little bit stronger. And if you look at how the low coming out of the west behaves, it behaves much differently than lows usually would and systems usually would, as they want to run up to the northeast. But the block forces it to move east and even southeast. Now we're seeing the upper low dropping back down into Kentucky and West Virginia. This is something that the models were doing back days ago. Then they kind of went, they were not quite as far south, not taking it more east than south. But because the block holds on a little stronger and a little longer, this is what we call, the 50-50 low, which is roughly where it is at about 51 and 52. So it's within 100 miles of 50 and 50, close enough. But you've got your trough here. You also, by the way, have a northwest flow running from Canada across New England. So this can't go this way. It has to go underneath this. So if our blocking low takes its time pulling out or lifting northward, that is going to force this system to move further to the south. And as we roll along here, you see how it drops down into West Virginia and then makes the turn to southeast of Cape Cod by the time we get to Tuesday morning. And that's because at this point, your block is pretty much gone. It's being replaced by the next upper low. You also have a bit of a kicker here behind it. There's a trough that's moving down out of the northern plains into the western lakes that's moving this thing along. And then our flow in Canada is now, instead of being northwest into New England, has pulled on up. And this is a natural process. This is what's supposed to happen. Otherwise, you'd remain with that block out there for forever and ever. It's got to break down sometime. And you notice that the next trough drops in along about. So here's Monday's system. That moves out. You got another trough here on Wednesday. But here at this point, there won't be that much for this to work on because the first system, the system for Sunday, Monday, is going to pretty much take all of it, and then that lifts out, and we're still getting troughs dropping into the east. Interestingly enough, so that's an interesting thing as we move along on the European. The last day on this is December the 8th, which is day 10. So I mean, it certainly does still look to me as if the pattern wants to stay relatively active in the longer term, and in fact, you do have a fairly active-looking signature here. You still got the split flow, which I've always liked to see split flows. That you get that southern stream being very active here. Come on, there you go. Changed colors on me, not good. Okay, so you've got your split flow, and this is next Sunday. The northern part of the jet runs up the west coast and then drops down. And you got, it's pretty busy here. This is very interesting. And this upper low, if that's real, coming down, this is not a half bad looking pattern to have if you're a winter weather lover going forward. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe what we're seeing this weekend for Sunday into Monday is not going to be just a one run wonder for the month, that we're probably going to have more weather systems to deal with this coming December. The pattern to me does look, fairly active. So quickly, we'll take a look here. I don't want to keep everybody too long tonight because it is Thanksgiving night and you're probably tired. And if I end the live stream a little early, we could, maybe take a few questions here, and then I can take a break. So here's your surface to show you how this comes out. And that western storm, radar's better. There's your western storm here, and you can see that ample snows break out across Montana and then eventually through North and South Dakota. Very, very tight gradient. This is a pretty deep low here, 980-ish low. Moving into, interestingly enough, on this run on the GFS, even when it gets into this position here by early Sunday morning, it's instead of being in northern Iowa like it was yesterday, it's now in northern Missouri. So it actually is a little bit further south with the surface low, and it's going to keep trying to force that redevelopment somewhere nearby. You see on this run, it kind of has it just east of the central New Jersey coast, south of Long Island. But the European is arguing for a low that's a bit further south than that, maybe east of Cape May. And, that mileage difference is important because you're talking about a very small change in the amount of cold air that's up to the north. And then, of course, the low starts to pull out. And you see how the GFS here does produce some snow during Monday, during the daytime. You get that cold air collapsing from the north. It's kind of hard to visualize on this model. One of the things when I look at something like this, and you see how the radar echoes, the presentation of the radar echoes, it's not the best looking radar presentation on a model that I've ever seen. So I want to be a little bit cautious here. The fact that the European wants to jump on board with this idea of something big. Well, the problem with that is that it better be right about the precip it develops during the day on Monday, because if it's not, you're not going to come out with much. The European actually does have much more of a front-end thump. Although if you look at the GFS in terms of the amount of precip it produces for Sunday afternoon and for Sunday evening, it's actually fairly significant. It does manage to produce half an inch to an inch of liquid in some places into Sunday evening. So if you wind up with a colder atmosphere on that front end, somebody could wind up with a sizable thumping of snow before the zero line moves up to the north. So this is going to be one of those deals where we're going to be watching the situation hour by hour with respect to the surface temperatures and also just to show you the 5,000 foot level here, which is I think really important. Your coastal low. So by Sunday morning, okay, your freezing line on the GFS is in south central New Jersey. The NAM is actually colder. The NAM's got that zero line down into Delaware. If this verifies in the NAM precip field and the GFS precip field in terms of amounts, not that different. You wind up with the colder profile for an extra 3 or 4 hours. That could be an extra couple of inches for somebody. But at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that zero line is in central New Jersey and still pretty cold at the 5,000 foot level over Long Island and Connecticut and into southeastern New York. By the time we get to 4 o'clock, the zero is just north of New York City and starts to push up the Hudson Valley. You're beginning to see that coastal low appear. But you notice as we go through Sunday night into early Monday morning that cold air is starting to come back. Okay, it's collapsing back on the west side of the low, and by the time we get to Monday morning, which this damn model run doesn't go far enough, the next one will. We'll see that zero line, and I think this is a good place to pull the European up. But look at the European here. By Monday morning, it's already below zero. New York City, most of New Jersey except the south, and it extends southward from there. And of course, by Tuesday, it's long gone. The low is southeast of Cape Cod. That's much further south and east than prior runs. And also, look how cold it is in terms of the 5,000 foot level. That cold air is advected all the way down into South Carolina, being pulled down on the backside. So the European, the NAM, have a colder atmospheric profile with all of this, and I think it's something that you have to pay attention to because that can make a huge difference with respect to the overall forecast. So I'm going to come back to the chat board now because it's Thanksgiving. I don't want to stay too long because I'm beat, and I think everybody else is kind of tired too. Nice to see everybody on board. If you're late to the live stream, happy Thanksgiving to you. Thank you for joining on this night. Janet Dunn. So driving to Boston from New York City Sunday, what is your guess for a window? Maybe just go Saturday night. Yeah, I think you could do that. If you leave early Sunday morning, I think you should be fine because I'm guessing snow doesn't arrive up in northern New Jersey and New York City until maybe after 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. So if that's the case, if you can leave early enough, I think you'll be okay. You should be able to make it to Boston before the precip gets all the way up there. Pretty good chance you'll be able to pull that off. But I would just say, Janet, make sure you watch on Saturday in terms of the timing. If put yourself at least in the position to make a split second, change of mind and say instead of going up Sunday morning, we'll drive up on Saturday, late Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. If you go on Saturday afternoon and Saturday or early Saturday evening, you absolutely will have no problem. So that is certainly the, that course is a win choice. If you decide to wait, I still think you'll be able to do it on Sunday morning as long as you leave early enough. Gary Payne, nice to see you on board. Pamela Gasper, welcome. Joseph Nurick is on. Northern Ohio White Christmas back in the early 70s. Well, in Scott Briller mentioned this to me yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to do it, and I really didn't have time. I could probably pull up a map real quick here, but it was Thanksgiving of 1989 that we saw New York City got 4 inches. I got about 9 or 10 inches here at my house in central Long Island. And then the next morning, that Friday morning, woke up to a temperature of 11 above zero. And I will tell you, by the way, that was the biggest snowfall of the winter. And that 11-degree temperature that next morning was also the coldest temperature of the entire winter. So that was one of those years where it kind of sort of spent its capital really early, if that really is such a thing. It spent its capital kind of early, and then the rest of the winter was just a big nothing. Joe C., now that the New York Giants are going to have a low draft pick, you think they will pick a block? You know what? Anything could help. They need such serious help, but I think they made the right decision with the quarterback. It's just that they've got to fill in all the other holes. They're at least several years away from being competitive, but you got to start from someplace. It will, Bobby Livingsworth, you have it all figured out already. I'm glad to hear it. You're saying a slushy 1 to 3 inches of snow possible for many. Uh, well, maybe it will be. We'll see. Christina Pedia, sorry I missed the beginning. How much for Long Island? And I know you never asked that. I've got Long Island right now in about a 1 to 2 inch zone. And this is again just for the daytime on Sunday. It doesn't count anything that might happen later Sunday night or on Monday. I'm not going to address that until tomorrow. I want to see at least another run of the European and maybe a couple of runs of the other models to see if are we seeing a stronger block? Are we seeing a track where a surface low is going to redevelop a little bit further to the south, much like what it had a couple of days ago, where it had lows developing off the Delaware coast rather than developing off the south shore of Long Island, because that does make a huge difference for snowfall for New Jersey, for Long Island, for southeastern New York, and for southern Connecticut. You want that low to be further to the south if you want to get more snowfall. Tony M., why do you think such a difference between the Euro and the GFS? There's not a whole lot of difference between the two, Tony M. It's when you look at them, it's really just a matter of where the development takes place of the surface low, with the GFS kind of lying a little bit on the northern end now, and the European a little bit further to the south. And up until recently, it was the reverse. So I guess there's an expectation that the European is somehow always going to nail these things. So there's a natural tendency for everybody to kind of go there, and a lot of the times it does do better than the other models, but it's far from perfect. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be correct just because it shows the more robust solution. I think the snow lovers gravitate to the European, are gravitating to the European simply because it is giving all of a sudden giving this really robust solution. But I will just tell you this, because I watched looked at the last 3 or 4 runs of the European fairly closely, and it actually has been running colder than the other models consistently, and now it's kind of taken this bigger leap. It is also showing that secondary low really develops quite nicely on the European model on this run. On some of the prior runs, it was kind of, just sort of in terms of what it was doing with precip. But it gives a solid round of precip here late Sunday night into Monday morning with the secondary development. That if that doesn't materialize, then you're going to wind up losing a good chunk of what the European is forecasting. That's why I think it's probably a good idea. Let's wait and see what tonight's run does. If it, is even remotely consistent, I can. Hang on 1 second here, folks. I'm going to try something. Let's see if I'm able to do this. Just give me a moment. I do have a secret way. I just have to find it's here someplace. I have all these bookmarks. I have all these sites bookmarked. I have I've had this habit of bookmarking. I get the site, a weather site of some kind, and I like what I see, and I bookmark it. Which is reasonable. All right, so I won't be able to show you this. Okay, so you're not going to be able to see this, but I actually can look. There's the ATZ European model. So I'm going to take a quick look at it now and see what it has. Okay. Okay. I want to see. Let's do multi-panel display. No, too messy. Can't show too many maps. I have to do single plot. Well, let's try that. Okay. Well, that's interestingly enough. I'm looking at the 18Z. It looks like to me that, at least from the standpoint of, this is for Monday morning. compared to what the day run did, I actually think that the surface low is probably a shade further south than what it was on that run. Let me just see how much precip it gives. It only goes out to 90 hours. So, okay, where is it? I got to find the precip map. All right, here we go. Operational precip. All right, I'm gonna have to guess here. So this is the frustrating part. I'm looking at the front end, the dark green. I'm just guessing. So at least for New York, let's say 1500s, then another quarter of an inch. 40. Yeah, it's. I guess it gives maybe about 3/4 of an inch of liquid between Sunday into Monday morning, and you still got precip going on, and there's actually a little bit of a bigger area of precip that's blossoming out to the north and west of the coast on Monday morning. So it's every bit as it's no further north. Certainly, it's no further north than what it was. From what, so that's for sure. And I just want to take a look to see if the ensemble out. Not that that necessarily will help, but it certainly can't hurt. This is 18Z Thursday. Yeah, I mean, the ensemble kind of matches up with the operational. So the low is sitting off the South Jersey coast, and the upper trough is just kind of moving right along, which is a good thing. 92 low by Sunday afternoon is running southeast of, just east-southeast of Long Island, of Montauk, and then it just kind of slides slowly to the east from there. So at the very least, the 18Z European run is fairly, it is no worse than consistent with what the 12Z run did. Oh, I just see somebody did hit Super Chat tonight. I see it there, but it's not telling me who. Steve LaPointe, thank you so much. I figured it out. Yay, I can figure this stuff out now. YouTube went to this new platform that I got to use, and it's totally different from what I had. So now I got to get used to a whole different way of doing things. But little by little, it's happening. Thank you so much, Steve, for hitting Super Chat tonight. Appreciate it. That's Snow Weenie should get what they want as an early Christmas gift. I totally agree with you. All right, folks, let's call it a night. It's 8:30. It's it's not, by the way, Scott Reese, that the GFS doesn't show any blocking. It does show the blocking. It's just not, at times it's been stronger. At times it's been a little weaker. So it depends on, when you've caught it over the last 3 or 4 days. All the models show blocking. That's not the issue. The issue is the strength of the block and how fast it pulls out. And here we're talking about whether something pulls out, 6 hours faster or 6 hours slower. And that does make a huge difference in terms of the outcome for any particular area. All right, now I'm going to say goodbye. So thanks for being here. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope everything went well. Chris Alley, nice to see you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and to Scott Briller, William Huber, who I saw at the bowling alley the other day, Robert Brown, Ronnie Abramowitz, and let's see, Scott Reese, Chad Crawford, Peter Bicker. No, I've got a secret place, Peter Bicker, where I can see the 18Z, so I can't really tell anybody. It's a huge secret, and they would come after me if I revealed it. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. You're gonna have to trust me on this. James Trumbull, welcome, and thanks for being here. I'm trying to get to everybody. Ben Harris, Ryan Ford, Christina Pedio, as I said before, Fyodor Ledkovsky, and Jason Barry, who was the first one on tonight, Mark Gladfelter. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And if I missed you, I'm sorry. I'll get you the next time, I swear. Okay? Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Just go back to usual schedule tomorrow. So will have a live stream tomorrow night, unless I'm just absolutely exhausted that I just don't feel like doing it. But I think I will do something. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.